I want to talk about something I haven't spoken about in some time, and that's Reylo, or the shipping of Kylo Ren and Rey. Now, Daisy Ridley just came out and made some comments on Reylo, and fans are split on what she said. Is it basically supporting this idea of Reylo, or should Reylos feel really bad about what she said and what might happen in Star Wars Episode 9? Well, I want to break down the complexities of this thing and talk about, in my opinion, the tragedy of Reylos when it comes to Star Wars Episode 9. We do it for the fans. This video was produced by Al Schuler, one of our executive producers via Patreon. What's up, everybody? Happy Star Wars Sunday to you if you're watching this on Sunday, and if you're not, no big deal, but you should know we drop sweet Star Wars videos every single Sunday. And yes, indeed, we are going to be talking about Reylo, and for some of you, that's a major turnoff, and yeah, I got nothing for you. I think this just might not be the video for you. And a word to the Reylos, you will undoubtedly not love a lot of what I have to say here, but I would urge you to just hear me out because, number one, it explains my position a little bit more. I know some of you have been curious about that, and I think it might just give you a fuller explanation of what might happen in Star Wars Episode 9 and what happened behind the scenes with Disney. Now, Al and myself have actually been talking about this for a long, long time. Like, literally, we've been talking about this situation for years, but really ramping up to Star Wars Episode 9 in the past couple of months, we've had many conversations about Reylo and about the Reylo community. And it's a super complicated issue, and I want to try to be fair to all different opinions when it comes to this thing, but I also have to be completely real with you about how I feel and how I view the situation. So let's start with my role in all of this, because many of you probably don't even know about how I was once a part of the Reylo community and actually a predominant voice within that community. I think the best way to say this is that at one time, I was one of the most popular male supporters of Reylo and the Reylo community. And how this happened was really interesting. I was actually doing a series of live streams with James Ridley and a lot of people from the Rebel Scum podcast leading up to Star Wars The Last Jedi. We were covering all of the different theories. Each week we dove deep on one of those theories, and the last one we covered the week of the release was Reylo. Now, in my research of the Reylo theory, I stumbled upon the Vincent Vendetta videos and a lot of great articles written on Tumblr and Reddit and different things like that. And I was actually legit convinced that not only was Reylo a real thing, but it was Disney's plan, that it was a plan that they had set into place to sort of add this romantic tension between these characters heading towards the end of the sequel trilogy. And the day before the movie came out, we did that live stream, but that file got corrupted and ended up being one of the worst live streams ever. And so what I did was the following day, I condensed all of those ideas for the Reylo theory into one singular video, and I released it hours before The Last Jedi released in theaters. And then after people saw that movie, there were a lot of people online searching for Reylo, and that video I did blew up. And what happens on YouTube and in Google is when you have one video that's very, very successful, Google tends to want you to just do content based around that thing. They want to niche down, and it's all about authority in the algorithm, but I don't want to get lost in the weeds there. Essentially, the point is, after I made this video, that blew up, and then any video I did for the next couple of months that had Reylo in the title or in the thumbnail got put out to a lot of people. That's just how it works. Ergo, I became a predominant male voice in the Reylo community. Now, to this day, I still like the tension between these two characters, and I think this underlining romantic thing that they have going on adds an amazing amount of tension to the film. I like it, and I actually really like the taboo aspects of it as well, and at the time, I thought that me liking those things meant that, yeah, I was a Reylo supporter, and I was a part of the Reylo community. But then as I learned more about that community and saw more of what that community was actively doing online, I distanced myself. I didn't really think those were the things I wanted to be represented by, and I just distanced myself from that community. And to this day, a lot of people that are in that community hate me for it. They absolutely hate me for it, and in some ways, I get it.
If you're not with me, then you're my enemy.
Because it wasn't just me. There were a lot of other male voices out there that had one time had supported Reylo that backed away from it. And I got the sense, and actually with talking to some of the predominant voices within that community, the sense out there was, oh, these men are abandoning this thing because they think it's too girly or silly or whatever. And that hurts because it's like a boys club attitude or whatever. You know, I've heard a lot of different versions of that argument, and I get that that perspective. Like, I get it, but ultimately that's what happened. But now let's talk about the like real tragedy here for the Reylos, and it begins with the antis. Okay, so there were a group of people that were considered anti-Reylo right from the start. And their biggest criticism, and the thing that they brought up the most to discount Reylo and to frankly make Reylo supporters feel really bad, was this idea of it messaging abusive relationships and the idea that that would be acceptable to young girls. I mean, frankly, people just thought that supporting the ship was sending the wrong message to young girls and saying that it's okay to be in an abusive relationship. And no matter how you feel about that personally, I felt like the antis were very unfair in not only the way they attacked Reylo supporters, but the frequency at which they did that. Like, they went way beyond what was reasonable and just really made these people feel super bad, or at least they tried to make these people feel super bad for liking this thing and supporting this thing because of the optics of it. And I mean, frankly, I'm not a shipper. Like, that's just not how I enjoy my fiction. But I've always said that, like, however people enjoy their Star Wars or whatever it is, like, let them enjoy it however they enjoy it. I just feel like that's a really ridiculous thing to try to take someone's enjoyment of something away for any sort of reason. You know, I think the abusive thing is like a pedantic argument. I don't really see it, and I don't really think it's valid. But I do agree that it's there, right? But I just felt like the antis took it to a whole new level. And in sort of a response to this, you saw the Reylo community sort of dig in and create this narrative that there's a more academic side to Reylo, or to this ship, and they pointed to literacy and mythology for examples of Reylo-like things happening in stories from the past, like Beauty and the Beast, Phantom and the Opera. I mean, there's a lot of different examples of these kind of things playing out in mythology, and there is precedence for these types of stories being told in the past of great literacy and in great mythology. Now, my issue with that was that it left people that were just enjoying the ship for being a ship kind of to the wayside. Like, it was almost like the Reylo community was trying to defend itself against antis by establishing itself as this thing that was way beyond a ship. But that's weird because the name itself is shipping culture. Like, that comes from shipping culture. And I always thought there were plenty of people out there that probably just liked it on the base level as a ship. And the Reylo community sort of turned their back on those people to fight the antis, which I thought was a mistake. It also left people like me who frankly loved the taboo aspects of it. Like, I gotta be honest, like, I don't really care about messaging that much. Like, I thought it was kind of hot and weird. Like, it's weird, dark, and sexy to me. I thought that was cool, but it made people like me feel like I wasn't even really a part of that community because I wasn't ready to say, oh, this is mythological, this is literacy, that's what it is. It's not just a silly ship. And this is where we get to the very tragic part of this whole story. And this would be Daisy Ridley's comments. Now, you might have heard this already, but Daisy Ridley recently spoke with Entertainment Weekly and talked about Reylo. And the fandom is split on whether or not what she said was in support of Reylos or like horribly anti towards Reylos. And let me just explain. Let's go over what she said right here. It does not bother me, people writing theories, Ridley said. It's really fun hearing them. Plus, because I know what's sort of going to happen, I think it'll be really interesting to see people's reaction to the final film. Obviously, there's this whole Reylo thing, and some people are very passionate about it, some aren't. JJ does deal with it, she added. It's a very complex issue. People talk about toxic relationships, and whatever it is, it's no joke, and I think it's dealt with really well because it's not skimmed over. Now, like I said, I've seen a lot of pro-Reylo people or people within the Reylo community hold up these comments as sort of vindication, and I'm sorry, that is just not the way I see it. In fact, this reads to me like a very anti-Reylo statement. I mean, why even bring up the toxic or abusive elements of this thing if you're trying to be positive about it? And by the way, when she says it's no joke, and I think it's dealt with really well because it's not skimmed over, she's not referring to Reylo. People that are saying that she's saying Reylo isn't skimmed over, you're not being correct. She's saying that the toxic relationships and that aspect to Reylo is not being skimmed over. Or at least that's how I'm reading the statement. I'm open to, being wrong there, but that's how I'm reading it. And besides that, this is not the first time that Daisy Ridley has brought up that dark side of Reylo, that toxic, abusive relationship aspect. When asked about this at Star Wars Celebration, she had similar statements talking about the abusive aspects, talking about how Kylo has killed so many people. And I mean, why would she continue to bring that up if that wasn't something that was going on in the film? Now, I think it's important to stop here for a second and remind you that when I was doing the research for this theory, it was literally the theory that had the most evidence that this was a Disney plan. I see countless examples and hints that this connection between Kylo Ren and Rey was something Disney did purposely. It's something they set up, and it's something they were going to pay off. And Al and I are in complete agreement that this was probably the plan, and it may have even ended a different way than we think it's going to end now, but there is a change. There was a change with Disney's plan. Now, that's speculation. We're getting into speculation territory here, just to be fair. But we believe that there was a change to the plan. And the question is, why? Well, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that it is a priority for Disney to put female empowerment into their films in a way to get more female audiences and really to keep more female customers for years to come. And by the way, I don't think this is an altruistic thing that Disney is doing. You should check out the Lindsay Ellis video on Woke Disney, because it's an incredible breakdown of how Disney is altering things and making the messaging different to make more girl bosses out there that will still buy Disney princess merchandise. And yes, I watched Lindsay Ellis, and yes, she's absolutely incredible at what she does. In fact, you can even argue that Rey, being the female protagonist of this new sequel trilogy, was an optics decision. It was done to bring in more female fans to the Star Wars brand. And I think it's been successful. Like, there's a lot of female fans that absolutely love Rey, and there's a lot of female fans that love the Rey and Kylo Ren connection. And I think if you watch that Lindsay Ellis video, you really get a sense for how Disney is altering things and changing the optics of their old stories. So like Beauty and the Beast, for instance, which a lot of people think is a huge allegory for what's going on with Kylo Ren and Rey, has been altered in the live action version. And like Lindsay does a great job of breaking that down, but they've just made Belle more hashtag girl boss in that film, and yet tried to figure out a way to still keep that princess element so that people will still buy the merchandise. So is it possible, given that context, that Disney decided that Reylo was problematic? Unfortunately, I think so. And so on the one hand, I believe that the Reylo community could feel validated and vindicated because there will be a romantic connection there played out. But the tragedy of this is that the thing that they have been attacked for the most, and in my opinion, very unfairly so, is actually the exact same reason that Disney might have changed the ending of Reylo, and we will not get a happy ending for Kylo Ren and Rey. And that is the tragedy of the Darth Reylos, because I do believe they will go Darth after watching this film. Of course, we don't know for sure what's going to happen in the movie, and apparently they're testing 8 different endings with audiences out there. That's a real story, by the way. That's not clickbait. They're testing 8 different endings with audiences for the Rise of Skywalker. So who knows how it will actually end, but from what we have put together from leaks and rumors and just watching what we see in the trailers, there's no sign of a happy ending for Kylo Ren and Rey. And I get the feeling that this is because of optics, and that's the tragedy. Like, do you sense where I'm coming from with this tragedy thing? It is absolutely tragic that this anti-thing that was so hurtful to so many of these people might actually be the exact same reason that not only Daisy Ridley doesn't like Reylo, but that Disney altered the Reylo plan. Now, I want to remind you that this is just speculation, and I am not an anti. Don't shoot the messenger, even though I know a lot of people will be upset that I even made this video, but I'm just trying to put this out there because this is the way that I see it. It's a lot of the thoughts that I've been having that I've sort of been holding back, and so I felt like it was time now, with Daisy making another statement like this, to put it all out there and explain what I think is going on. because it really is tragic when you consider where a lot of the Reylo community is at. And also, I want to remind everybody that this video was produced by Al Schuler, so if you really hate it, he gets at least part of the blame for this. But in all seriousness, the executive producers and everybody that helps us out on Patreon help this channel exist. So if you like the content, if you want to continue to help the channel out, consider checking out the Patreon today. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes goodies that people get for being a Patreon. We try to really give them a lot of value, and they really help us out. So consider checking that out today. And I want to check the nerd card real quick before we get out of here. This character just popped up, and a lot of people think that this character is a certain actor who may or may not actually be in The Rise of Skywalker. Who do people think this actor is for this new Star Wars character? Answer that question in the comment section below. As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.